computer. Okay, we're ready to go.
How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? Well, you get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use the scientific method, and that is guaranteed to make you a smarter fantasy football player. Now, notice I didn't say necessarily a winning fantasy football player. I just said it would make you smarter because fantasy football is a statistics driven game, and using the scientific method means we're just going to use statistics in a smarter way. Let the statistics lead you to the answer of what is better, what is worse, instead of cherry picking stats like way too many people do in fantasy football. And joining me, as he always does here on the podcast, it is the fantasy professor. He's a real professor. It's John Bush. And John, it's great to have you back from vacation.
Yep, yeah, had a great time. Went to Scotland. And Dennis, I hadn't told you this, but I realized something about fantasy football there. I love Scotland, love the people, but there is a saying that Scottish people are really careful with their money, right? Some people might say stingy, right? It's they have that tradition, they watch every penny. And so that inspired me with a new thinking, Dennis, that I think we should both apply. We should be stingy with our draft capital in this year's drafts, Dennis, just like the Scots would do. So they are going to help me be better by reminding me to be stingy. We look for all that value. Okay, don't accept a little. We want to be greedy, but we want to be stingy. So that was the lesson for fantasy, that I got. I did not find the Loch Ness monster, but I did take that concept of, being stingy with your draft capital. So that was my big fantasy football takeaway visiting Scotland, Dennis, and had a great time. Saw a lot of scenery. Had a couple single malt whiskey tastings, and it was interesting. I learned a lot about the practical side of fermentation. I watch moonshiners here on TV in
Oh,
America,
yeah.
so I kind of knew things, but it was interesting. You walk into some of those rooms and you could smell the vapors, and whew, it's pretty tough stuff. And we got tasting at the end, and I now know how to taste whiskey proper. In my day,
Ooh.
from the 70s, the proper tasting was pop the top and guzzle. And I realized we had missed the whole performance. You put it in a snifter, you put your hand on top the snifter, and you gently warm it with your temperature, and you trapped those volatile organics, and then you open and smell first. Get that nose going, and then you do a little tasting. And sometimes even adding a drop of water or two can release more of the whiskey nose and taste. And so we went through all that, saw the aging process, and I learned a lot about whiskey making in Scotland and Ireland too. We went to Belfast and went to Bushmill. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's a famous Irish whiskey.
Ooh.
And Bushmill, I didn't catch if I'm related somehow. I was about to say, my last name's Bush. I get some free stuff here. Is this my great grandfather here? What, where am I in on this? I'm feeling Irish today, so where's my paycheck? I was afraid they would put me in the Irish hoosgow, Dennis, so I did not cause a ruckus. I just tasted and was sweet. But I always wondered, is there some long lost relative over there and I need to claim my share of the fortune in the castles? I probably got one over there somewhere, some castle I can, draft my teams from there, kind of get that mentality, that Scottish stingy draft capital in the castle mentality here. Protect myself from bad choices. Use the moat, put the drawbridge up, no bad choices, stingy with draft capital. There's my lesson from Scotland and Ireland, Dennis.
Yeah, and those are great lessons indeed, because you do need to be stingy with
Yeah,
your
that's
draft
what I'm
capital.
thinking.
And that's what it just drives me crazy when I see people talking and fighting between 20 and 30-second drafts. No, I want time. I I want to be able to think about, if I pick this player, then what is the next step? You can't do that in a 30-second draft. You can't do it in a minute draft or a 5-minute draft. You have to sometimes, and yes, you can think ahead, but until the last 3 picks before your player are taken, you can't analyze with any great knowledge, especially later in the draft when ADP gets a little more variable. But if I pick a wide receiver with this move, what does that set me up to do and to look for in my next pick? That's the way you have to think your way through a draft. And obviously, early in the draft, it's pretty easy. You're going for the best player available, and you really don't care what position that player is going to be. First 3 rounds, I don't care. I'm going to take the best player available. But as you get going farther and farther into the draft, you need to be stingy. I don't want to take a guy who I'm having to add at my team and he will be that result. It's the 15th wide receiver off the board and you've got him forecast to be the 15th best. Well, that didn't give you a lot of value, did it? Because if you're wrong, where is his downside? If you're wrong about that 15th best forecast, is his downside, yeah, he could be better? If that's the case, yes, then you're being stingy by adding him to your team, because if you're wrong, you're going to be more right with your pick. But if his downside is 35th and his upside is 15th and I'm picking him 15th, I got to be perfect. Because if I'm not, then I've just grabbed a guy who I've spent too much on. And if you think stingy like that in fantasy football drafts, I think you're going to do better. I don't have a gripe this week because I'm so happy to be back doing the podcast, but I do have an observation to make about fantasy football Twitter. Have you ever noticed that the people who are most exact about what is going to happen are usually the ones giving really bad advice? And usually ones with very, very short memories. I had a discussion where I said, JJ McCarthy with Minnesota, I kind of like his upside value. And I was stating this in only superflex leagues where you need 3 quarterbacks if you're going to really perform well. And JJ McCarthy is a great example of a guy that I will have in my group, my cluster of quarterbacks later in the draft to possibly add as my second or third quarterback, or in some cases, I might even take 4 this year in a super flex. All depends on how the draft lays out. But the reason I like him is because Sam Darnold looked awfully good in that offense. And I had some Sam Darnold last year in super flex leagues because I thought the offense was pretty good. If you're throwing to Justin Jefferson, you got a shot at being okay. And again, not saying top 10 here, but in a super flex, you want top 25. I want 3 quarterbacks in the top 25. Then I can play matchups and do just fine. And as you've seen in the past, I'm pretty successful in Superflex by going with a slightly different strategy because I'm not afraid after that first quarterback. Yeah, if I've got the first 3 picks in the draft, I'm taking a quarterback. But if I'm the 10th pick in the first round, instead of getting maybe the 8th best quarterback, maybe it's right to get the best running back or wide receiver, knowing that I'll stitch together a group of quarterbacks. Last year, my guys that I targeted were guys like Baker Mayfield, Jordan Love, Jared Goff, all great values. So if I didn't get a top quarterback and I could get 3 of those guys and then add 1 more, to that list because I probably won't get all 3 of them, I'm going to do just fine at quarterback. And I'm going to patch together with matchups who's going to play which week. Yeah, I would love to have 2 stud quarterbacks, and in dynasty fantasy football, I've got some teams where I've got Burrow and Allen, or I've got Hurts and Mahomes. You don't have to make a decision all year at quarterback. You got your guys to start, except for when they're on their bye week. But in redraft leagues or even best ball, superflex, you don't have that luxury. You usually will not get 2 of the top guys. So, I was discussing that, and the guy said, "Well, he's not proven. He's just a rookie. He's never played. He's like a rookie. He's never played in the NFL." And I said, "Well, I asked a simple question. How did you feel about Sam Darnold last year? Did you have a lot of Sam Darnold on your team last year?" "Oh, no, I didn't think he'd be very good." Well, he was. He was good enough to be your second quarterback in Superflex and really do well. And my point is, we have such short memories in fantasy football. Now, I'm not telling you that if you were wrong about a player last year to apply the same logic and you're magically always going to be right the next year. What I'm saying is have that level of being humble that sometimes, especially this early in the draft season, July 19th, we're recording this. I don't even know what I don't know yet in some circumstances with some teams. And a month from now, I'll have more information. And then a week before the season, I'll know who's lining up as the starter. Doesn't mean they're going to keep the starting position, but I at least have more information than I have right now. And when you're drafting a team right now, you should be drafting in such a way that if you're wrong, you're going to be right. So I'd like to propose a concept that I've used that's been very successful, and it ties right into what we're seeing. Everybody's freaking out. Rashee Rice and Jordan Addison will probably get suspended to start the season. So what? So what? Are they good players? Or are they not good players to have on your team? I have a 4 quarters concept to a fantasy football season. So it's 17 weeks long, right?
Yes.
Playoffs are 3 weeks long at the end, usually in most formats.
Yeah.
But I break the season up into 4 quarters. And I look at every player that I draft. I ask the question, could this guy be a contributing factor during one of those quarters of the season? So I don't pick an ordinary wide receiver. I don't want the 6, 7, 8-point wonders that'll go on to be WR35 because they play 37 games and they average 6 points. I don't like those guys on my team. But I'll take guys. I take a lot of rookie wide receivers late. It's not that I'm a wonder kid at knowing who's going to be great as a rookie wide receiver. It's just that they're going to be better at the end of the year than they are at the beginning of the year. So now I've got a guy who can come on late. Same with running backs. I draft a lot of them, but they always have to have something in common. Could this guy turn into a starter if the starter gets hurt? Or is it another guy I want to grab? Look at the season as 4 quarters. I don't care if I end up with every one of my players in the top 15 in total fantasy points at the end of the year. Don't care. What I care about is, do I have a team that every given week I've got some choices that I know these guys are going to be contributing on the team? Just drafted a team 12 team league, one quarterback league. And it's a tournament where after you get through the regular season, you're playing against more than just the guys from your league. So I have Aaron Jones, Jordan Addison. I've got Travis Etienne, and I got Tootin. I've got the backup for every one of my running backs. It wasn't something that I set out and overdrafted them to do, but it worked out great. And what that tells me is that very short benches on this team relative to a lot of different leagues I'm in, but I'm protected. I don't have to worry about waiver bids to get starting running backs unless I really am unlucky and both guys get hurt. But the idea is draft in a way that for each of the quarters of the season, you've got some players that could emerge and could be a factor.
So when you said that, I started thinking, over time, are there players that dominate early versus late, or are there, players that are pretty good throughout? In other words, kind of the Tyler Lockett, but over the quarters versus the game.
Yes.
It just, and is it more like running backs or wide receivers? In other words, we're talking the structure of the season almost. And I don't know if people really, I mean, you will see, oh, this person, the last 7 games, they did this. And again, Dennis, they're doing the cherry picking. They looked after the fact and noticed, oh, this guy had a great run. And, statistically, what you would do would be uh, grab those, over the last 5 or 6 years and compare maybe to players that didn't have a good run. And then is there something different about those groups next year? In other words, is there any predictive nature? People want to tell you, oh, the last 6 games, they averaged this, implying that that is going to be predictive for this year. Could be, maybe not. But when they propose that, that's where it stops. And no, that's where it just begins. You just set a question, even if you went backward. Like I said, in horse racing, the tip sheet's red board, and I've seen riders in thoroughbred, they'll look, the last time this horse had a new jockey won or something, and somehow that's going to be predictive because they've got a new jockey this today.
Yeah.
So it's implying this data set of one, that kind of thing. So you can really get muddled in the weeds if that's what you're spending your time to do. And I would, there are ways to set up data to look at predictiveness. And Dennis, you and I will be going to the expo.
Oh, yeah.
And let me share just a little something that our video viewers can see, this is a poster that we are going to be presenting at the expo. Bob Lung has allowed us to do a tryout of a scientific poster presentation to maybe this is something that will grow in the future. As a scientist, I've been to many science meetings and usually have talks and panels, and then vendors, selling the latest test tubes, or, our test tubes are better than your test tubes kind of thing. But
Yeah.
the third part is a poster session. And I know in agriculture data, you've seen this as well in
Yes.
agronomy and things,
Yep.
that people talk about, this kind of fertilizer or this kind of method of plowing, same concept. And so I'm going to be presenting analysis of running backs, touches per game, as a predictive model for the next year's performance used in 2013 to 24. So I'm going to dig deep to see, is there any predictive nature, right? It's not just, I can say that I think it is, but is it really statistically? And we will be sharing this at the expo. If you're coming to the expo, I got to work. Dennis and I will be working on his poster with consistency metrics and being predictive. That's coming, but I had this one finished and get ready to send it off to the printer here. And hopefully we won't look too Mickey Mouse on our presentation, but I like the color. I like the data, Dennis. And I want to thank again Bob Lung for having enough faith in us to, kind of do a proof of concept, concept. And so if you're listening and if you like data and you've got studies, maybe this is something you could do at 2026 Expo. And I'm hoping it will grow to where we'll have a lot of people participate in the next few years. Have no clue. Bob doesn't know. Bob Lung doesn't know, but he's willing to experiment. Good guy. You always experiment and see a couple years how this is going to go. So I'm hoping we'll have a couple years try to grow this. It may not, Dennis, and that's fine. But at least we given it a shot. And people then, if you come to the poster, look at it, see what we're doing, and we'll try to hang around a little bit, probably Sunday. Try to set it up the Saturday, and then Sunday, while we're glad handing the people in the booths and listening to talks, I'll try to stand over by my poster and look like I know something, Dennis. So, yeah. So anyway, that's coming. This is never been done before. So I don't know how it's going to fall, Dennis, but we'll see. And again, we may be all lonely over by ourselves in the corner of shame at the expo, and that's fine. I'm willing to be, it's like wearing the cone of shame if your dog was surgery and you can't chew your stitches. I guess I'll put a little cone around me the next year to show my shame at being in the nook here over there to the side. So we'll see what happens. I just wanted people to see that the poster is coming. I'm going to print this puppy, and we're going to have a couple posters, and Dennis can present his, and I'll present this one here. So I was very intrigued. There's some surprising stuff here. If you're awake, I'm handing you some extra treats, and we'll see how it all goes, Dennis. So anything you want to add?
Yeah, and here's the great thing,
Oh, by the
folks.
way, here's our logo, Dennis. See the football
Yes, I
sign?
love
Yeah.
that. I
Yeah.
love it.
So AI helped us out there. So,
And here's the great thing, folks, is we're going to help you in giving you some of the guidance needed
oh, yeah. After the
so
fact.
you can prepare your own poster for
Yes.
next year.
We'll
And
have
that's the
some
key is
training methods. Yeah. Training sessions. Yeah.
correct. We're going to be able to help people because we believe that there is more winning to be done when you understand data in a data driven game like fantasy football. And for instance, some of the concepts that I've used for years and won with for years, we're going to be attempting in the future to do studies that will show why this is successful, not just that it was successful. Why was it successful? What did we grab with a particular player? And I've got a hypothesis. We're going to test it, and maybe that will be a poster for next season as well. And not all of the results that we will show will necessarily be positive, because we will test some things and rule them out with science. And we're willing to show that as well. The key to using the scientific method in fantasy football is when you find out that what you're doing is predictive, that science, the numbers tell you that it works, that's great. That's fantastic. But sometimes you'll learn that something you're doing is not as good as it could be by the data, and the data will tell you, okay, this has got its limitations. So be careful. You can't blindly follow any one number in fantasy football, just like you can't go to the track and bet on the highest buyer figure over the last 3 races and win consistently. You have to understand how to use that data, but you can't understand how to use that data until you understand the limitations of that data. And that's the big key of what we're trying to do. But we understand that not everybody has been to a bazillion conferences like we have and have seen how these posters work. So we're going to be there to give you some advice on how to do things. But a great example of this win various quarters of the season is with my wide receiver drafting this year. I'm willing to grab Evans or Godwin at their ADPs for Tampa. But a lot of times when I'm doing that, I'm backing them up with Egbuke, the rookie, who probably will come on at the end of the season, especially if one of the veterans has some injuries. That's what I mean by winning 4 quarters. But in order to pick out the right rookies, you have to understand their opportunity for success. Not every rookie is guaranteed to be a starter. What I love to look at is the opportunity. And I know we're going to revisit my opportunity index, which, again, this year, brand new idea. It's an idea that I've used in the past, but I've never tried to put numbers and probabilities to it before. And we did that this year. But that was early, and we're getting into that time where we have a little more information.
I was trying. So, Dennis, as you know, I sometimes I like to trick you, and you don't know what's coming. But I already told you this was coming. So I have questions, and I wanted us to really, for the next 20 minutes. I know we all got things to do here, but let's. Do you want to? Let's try running backs, and then if we have time, move the wide receivers. We can always catch this next week. But my question was, I think this was out, in June or so?
It was out in, I want to say it was May.
May.
It was late May. It was
after the draft. And so I was because I'm getting ready to start thinking about some of these, especially the opportunity, using that as a metric for late round, rookie forge and hoard concept. You're better than zero strategy that we certainly did well last year with. So this is allowing me to, especially these rookies, because I'm not like you are on the rookies. So I acknowledge that. And but we have some metrics. I made you put the metrics because we need to have a starting place, folks. This is not the
Yes.
end.
No.
And we can test this. And just, old Dennis was really goofy with his running backs last year, but his tight ends hit. That's the
Yes.
kind of information that your diary tells you, and this kind of stuff tells you. Write down your predictions in your diary. If you don't do that, then you'll be tricked because you were thinking in June X, Y, or Z, and you kind of forget about it. Then somehow you're going to remember wrong. You're going to say, "Oh, I think I had that." Well, what's your diary say? If you write it at the time you predict it and you put metrics to it, it's black and white. I thought Gianti was 80% probable that he was going to have the best opportunity of running backs. Yes or no? I mean, injuries, we can't predict that, but based on what we perceive, especially Dennis perceives at the Raiders, that's how it looks. So we'll find out. Is that real or Memorex on all this stuff, Dennis? So however you want to approach this, but I was just curious if anything's moved, has any probabilities moved? Would you move players up or down? Anything happened the last month or two that you want to tell us about?
Yeah, so the biggest change has been with Denver because they decided after drafting RJ Harvey
Yeah.
that they were going to add another running back. So they picked up J.K. Dobbins.
So they got
And
Dobbins, Harvey, who else?
Estime are there three,
Three. Estime
three
had
guys.
he had some use last year, but I don't remember it being just overwhelming that
No,
yeah.
no. So those are their guys
So it
that are
seems a
there,
little
but
murky to me.
it is murky. And they also have Jaleel McLaughlin, who has some usage in the passing game.
So
But
you had 70%. Are you saying you would probably move that down?
yes, so the opportunity index, when you add J.K. Dobbins to the roster,
Mm-hmm.
that opportunity index drops to 15.
Wow,
So,
that is
yes,
major, Dennis.
huge, huge. So, what this tells me is no, I'm not saying don't draft RJ Harvey. Okay.
No,
What I'm telling you though, is that you have to go into drafting Harvey with your eyes wide open that there is now more
stingy
competition.
with your ADP draft capital, Dennis.
Correct.
You're telling me to take some bargains here. Don't overreach for Harvey now. You would have
That's
overreached in June. You would
yes.
not overreach now.
No, because when Harvey was when this was forecast, Harvey's competition
Was nothing.
for touches was Estime and McLaughlin.
And
That's it.
yeah, pretty weak.
And now you've added J.K. Dobbins. Now Dobbins has a long history of injuries.
Yes.
Okay. So if I'm adding RJ Harvey to my roster, I'm still fine with that. But I'm not as crazy about it as I was back in May because now there's more competition for touches. Again, doesn't mean I'm not going to take Harvey, but I'm probably not going to be in a situation. Let's say I've only got one running back on my roster because I've gone other positions. And the decision is, do I want to add Harvey or Johnson as my second running back, whatever? I'm probably leaning towards Caleb Johnson because his competition is Jaylen Warren, who I don't think, well, the opportunity index says there's much more likelihood that Johnson wins that starting spot than Harvey. And again, doesn't mean
so you would change. This is Johnson from Chicago.
Correct. No. Johnson from Pittsburgh.
Okay, so
Caleb Johnson, the rookie.
So this wasn't even on your list.
No, well, it's changed. So
Yeah.
Harvey will drop way down, and Caleb Johnson
Will
was
go
in fourth. He goes up to third.
Okay.
So
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
In Pittsburgh.
yeah, Pittsburgh, correct.
Yeah.
So he's
Caleb
still there.
Johnson. Oh, he's at
Yeah,
50. So you're
yeah.
saying 60? What metric would you assign him then?
Probably would be, just a little bit behind. And here's the thing. So Blue and Sanders
Yeah.
have a great opportunity
Yeah.
with Dallas, but Javonte Williams switching teams and switching opportunities could also be the guy that ends up emerging. So
they
with
go
Dallas,
down?
we've got three guys
Kind of
for
like
that
Denver.
one position. But yeah, so Denver, now we've got two guys for that position. And Dobbins, being the veteran, he might take some of that share. But what we might probably see, what my guess would be, is more of a running back by committee. So that in redraft, I'm a little bit leery about those running backs by committee. I would prefer to have one where at least I know I've got a lead back that's going to get 15, 16 carries a week with the other guy getting 10, that type of a deal. I'd rather have the majority backfield guy than a situation, with Denver could be one of those, it's the whoever's hot that week. Remember how much we hate that when we see, I'm giving it to the hot hand this week. And
hot hand.
When you're setting your lineup, you don't have a clue of who is going to be the so-called hot hand. Right. That becomes very tough. Now, if it's a high running attack like Denver is going to be or is likely to be, I think they're going to run a lot. Maybe having Harvey and Dobbins isn't a bad way to go. And maybe you end up having to start both of them, one in a flex, one as your starting running back. That might be an option.
The Harvey right now, hearing you talk, I'm looking at the FFPC ADP. Harvey's at 64 overall. Johnson 67. They're the same.
Yes. Yeah. And those rookies
so
are
you would argue
close.
Johnson over Harvey.
I would, because I think there's less likelihood of.
Would you draft either one at value though? There's the trick.
Yeah, you would. It's close. It's close because again, it's one of those deals where do I like him enough at that position? That's a dependent on the team build more than anything else. And who do I have to choose from at that spot? Am I
Harvey, Caleb Johnson, and then down is Montgomery and Jukins and Aaron Jones, Pacheco.
And who are some of the wide receivers? Who are some of the wide receivers that are in that and area. The tight ends and the quarterbacks?
Yeah. So we're talking Flowers, Ridley, Travis Hunter, Kelsey, Ingram, Judy, Olave right in there. Godwin.
Yeah. And Waddle's in that mix too.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of looking. So you're going to have some interesting. So it's probably going to depend on how the draft went early for you.
Correct.
Right. Adaptive concept, right?
The whole adaptive concept, because, it's, again, doesn't mean I'm out on Harvey, that quote unquote, I'm out on this player. It depends on where he is value-wise and where I am at that point in the draft.
Right.
But I like his opportunity
here's a
lot less than I did earlier.
Right. Here's Harvey. There's Caleb. And then here's all the players around. Even Hawkinson could be in there.
Hawkinson could
Smith,
be there.
Waddle.
Might like Swift better. Ridley. Ridley is a guy that I'd consider. Kelsey, of course.
It seems to be murky that these guys are not got to have them in this area.
No, and that's the key is these guys are sort of interchangeable. And the fact that Harvey has more competition for touches now makes me wonder if, first of all, I think his ADP will go down a little bit more as time goes on. But it's, him and Caleb Johnson, if I was just, let's say I need that second running back or third running back on a roster, I've already got a tight end, so Kelsey's not in play. I'm feeling good about my wide receivers, so adding one at this point,
Godwin's hard to give up down here at 71.
Godwin's sitting there. Olave is sitting there. I like both of those guys.
Yeah, there's some bang for your buck there.
Let's say I'm set up at wide receiver.
Okay.
I was drafting late in the first round, and I went wide receiver.
So you're on the turn, and you got who?
Let's say I get Malik Neighbors. Let's say Malik Neighbors falls, and I get Neighbors and Brown. And I'm like, or Brown and Brown.
Brown and Brown.
I get both Browns, or I get McBride and Brown, or whatever. Yeah. But then I come back with another wide receiver. So I'm in good wide receiver situation.
Right.
And so I'm saying, okay, I need a running back. Well, what looks good here? And if Caleb Johnson and RJ Harvey are on the list, and let's say Swift is gone already, and Connors is gone already, and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to decide between these two players. That's where opportunity index comes into play for me. Again, I won't hold as a slave to any one metric.
Right.
Okay. But if I'm set to make a decision between those two players, I'm looking at all the facts and I'm saying, okay, now Harvey has a little bit more of a downside because he could lose touches to somebody else. And that's where maybe I go with Johnson. Yeah, Johnson can lose touches to Warren, especially in the passing game. But who's most likely to get the ball at the goal line? Probably Caleb Johnson. And so that's kind of how I play the game. And then I also look at who they played against. And Caleb Johnson, a Big Ten guy, RJ Harvey, smaller college. And now I'm going, oh, there's another reason to be worried about Harvey. And that's how I kind of factor in all the data. But they're, where I have them for a forecast is kind of overlapping. But because of the addition of Dobbins, I had to drop his forecast a little bit because I'm like, there's a downside to having him now that there wasn't when I first made that choice. So that's kind of how I factor in everything and say, maybe not. Versus a guy that I'm like, okay, he's got a little more opportunity. I like his chances better. But that's how I would use the opportunity index. I would not force it. I would look at a guy and also look at.
And you're going to update for us, right? Okay.
Correct. So we'll do another visit on the opportunity index when we get a little closer to camp and we can start to see how few things work out. I don't listen to a lot of coach speak. So one of the assistant coaches on Dallas said that Jaden Blue is lazy. He could be lazy and immature.
Ruh-roh.
Great. Who cares? Because the coaches will always say bad things about rookies to motivate them. And they'll put them fourth on the depth chart, stuff like that to motivate the guy. Oh, I'm going to work harder. I don't know if it works, but coaches have been doing this for years. But the key is when you look at the running back situation, the biggest change was the addition of Dobbins, who gives more competition for RJ Harvey.
Good. So before I forget, this is one of those, Dennis, if I don't tell you, I'll forget by next week. Going back to your 4 quarters, historically, the leaders in your 4th quarter that's helped you the most, what region of the draft have they come from? Has it just the top two or three rounds and they're who you thought they were and they deliver? Or with running backs, are there some surprises? And if so, historically, last 10 years, where have they come from in the draft? In other words, is there instead of a dead zone, is there a 4-quarter zone, the fourth quarter? Where's that coming from by position? How about that?
Yeah, and that's a good question that may not have an answer
I know,
right
but I
now.
just wanted to say it, Dennis, so
Be-
you can help me remember probably next year
But
because
but
I'm
this
going to
is
forget.
but this is why I love rookie running backs.
Yeah.
Okay, and I love rookie wide receivers as well. Not so much on the rookie tight ends. You know, obviously we loved Bowers last year because he was taken so early. I'm kind of liking Loveland and Warren this year. Will their cost in the draft get too high? So far, Loveland hasn't. Warren is pushing up a little bit higher than I'd like to see him. And there's some veterans at that same position that I look at maybe as having as good of a chance. But I like adding rookies because we usually see those rookies get an opportunity later in the season to do something, even if they don't get to start strong. Look at Xavier Worthy last year with Kansas City. Closed the season well and then did even better in the playoffs. Now, those are the kinds of guys I love having on the team. Now, for every one of those, you got a Brian Thomas Jr. and a Malik Neighbors who came out of the box just fabulous. So, but they have the better opportunity index than Worthy did. And so when we see opportunity index, even though a guy might be low on that opportunity index, if he's on the roster and he's in the pecking order
Yep.
to move up, that's maybe our fourth quarter guys end up being our lower opportunity index guys
I don't
because
know.
they
I
did.
just the
Yeah.
question that we need to explore, and is
And
where's
when it
our
comes,
where's our interns?
yes. And when it comes to where in the draft, I'm not so sure
I don't know if I know.
be,
I had to ask that question now to
because we
figure.
saw an Isaiah Pacheco as a seventh rounder
Yeah.
come on really strong his rookie year. I mean, these are opportunities don't usually go to the lower drafted rookies. Okay. The teams will look at the draft capital a little bit for first opportunity, first man up.
Yeah.
But if you make a roster, you can have an impact. And if you can have an impact, maybe you can have that impact late in the season. But at running back, the biggest change was Harvey dropping from an 87 opportunity index down to 15. That's
Boy,
huge.
that's big.
This isn't dropping 5 points. This is
No.
making a huge decline. So if you grab Harvey, you better have Dobbins on that team as well. You don't know right now who is going to emerge as the lead running back. I might want to have them both because they are going to be a heavy run offense. Just like if I take Bucky Irving, I'm probably taking Rashad White. I did that last year and the ADPs were reversed. But this year you have to spend a lot more on Bucky, and then you probably need to protect yourself with White. Again, when it comes to handcuffs, I like having my own handcuffs because logic, not data, but logic tells me I only need one injury for that guy to become, a big part of my team. If I have somebody else's handcuff, I'm fine with that. But I now need two injuries to occur before that player is worth starting in my roster. I need the injury to one of my guys, one of my starters, and an injury to the starter that's ahead of my other running back. Logic tells me I'd rather be protected to have only one injury to pay off than trying to predict two because I can't predict injuries. But I can.
Probably in redraft, because I could see in dynasty you might have a
Oh
trade
yeah.
piece,
Oh yeah.
to
Yeah.
dangle. But
Yes.
so I think that is more germane to the redraft. And in
Yes.
FFPC, they don't have any trades, so you can't
No.
conspire. I do like that. I wish that, but I don't want to spend $35 thinking there's two. I'm playing two, three people conspiring, to trade and do some funny stuff. I don't like that.
No, no. And that's why I say I build my strategies for no trades
Yep.
in redraft. And even if I'm playing in a league that allows trades, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be able to find a trading partner.
Right.
So I like to build my strategy. And quite frankly, we're building our strategies to be successful in FPPC
Yes.
redraft because that's where we're going to play a lot of our money.
Well, I
But
got 27 shots at it that I won last year. So I got to play at least 27 leagues.
and I had a smaller portfolio over there, but I'm working my way through my 8 free teams
Oh my
before I get to
goodness.
spending any money. So, yeah, and I'm already starting to draft those because I
Nice.
know I'm naming all my teams with the
Nice.
date. And
Yeah.
so I'll be able to tell where my most success
Well,
comes.
I know where mine is. I've done
You
it for
know,
2 years, and
yes.
I get better later in the season. In other words, nothing surprising about that. What would be nice if I could figure out somebody could teach me how to win in June, big money. That would be, I don't know who that is, but I'll be glad to share what I know. If you can share what you know, enlighten me. It just seems harder to win in June than it would in August.
And I know from my past that I'm sort of even. And when I did my last big test on redraft,
Yeah.
I was pretty good early,
Mm-hmm.
got better, and then I fell off at the end. And what that taught me was to not let the noise get.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Don't
noise
let the noise.
because you
Don't
have all
let.
those, exhibition games and
Don't.
they keep showing the same touchdown by the youngin
Yep.
and over and people on the Twitter over and everybody starts frothing and it gets crazy. It
Yeah,
gets crazy.
and I was letting the noise from fantasy football Twitter affect me.
Yeah.
And I
It's like
learned.
standing in line, Dennis, and the guy in front of you bets $100 across the board on this
Yep.
player, his horse, and you're like, man, my little crap.
I
This
wonder
guy,
what
he
does he
knows some.
know?
Then you
What does
think
he know?
he knows. Yeah, what does he know that I don't? And you
Yeah.
start playing games, and then you bet with him, and you lose, and your
Yeah.
horse that you like won, or the other way around, and you're like, and so you just tricked, and you don't remember long term. You just remember the next race. You remember, man, I should have. Then you start, man, maybe I can follow him again to the window. I mean, you see games like that. There'll be people following trainers and certain old the hot dog man. What's he betting on? That kind of thing. It gets crazy, Dennis. At eighth and ninth race, you
Yeah.
start getting your bankroll's a little down, and you start getting crazy.
Well, I used to have all these numbers on my program,
Yeah,
and I usually used a red pen because I wanted my numbers to stand out so I could see them.
yeah.
And so as you're standing in line, people are always looking over your
Looking. What
shoulders
does
and
that
looking
mean?
at what you got.
Yeah.
And
What
they
does that
see the
mean?
numbers. They see
Yeah.
the numbers and they're like, wow, wow. And then there's other people that that would come to me for some advice on picks. I had
Okay.
these brothers from Milwaukee that were always at the track and they'd
Yeah.
pay me
Yeah.
for my picks. And then
Yeah.
if I was successful, they'd pay me from their winnings, a
Nice.
little bonus. So I got to the point where I could make money without betting, which was even the
Nice.
smarter way of doing it at the racetrack.
Yeah.
But people would look at the numbers. Oh, what is that all about? Well,
Yeah.
if you got an hour, I'd be glad to explain it.
Yeah. They ain't
But
got an hour. Just give me the winner
no,
and we'll
just give
worry
me the
about
winner.
chopping the wood later,
Just give me
Dennis.
the winner. And they'd be fooled because the highest points wasn't always the best bet.
Yep.
Because it was above a certain number of points, above 14 points,
Yep.
that a horse didn't get any better at 18 than he did at 14. Okay. An 18-point horse usually was just lower odds.
Yep.
And that 14 or more horse had an equal chance to win. I knew that. It was, and the numbers were there to be seen, but people would see 20, and 20 actually over 18 started dropping off in win percentage. Yep. Because we know horses don't retain form for too long.
Especially cheap ones.
Oh, yeah. Claimers, which is where I did my most damage in harness, they would fall off after 4 or 5 weeks of being in prime condition. They would drop off. So you wanted to catch the guys as they were, the horses as they were improving, not as they were peaking. And people didn't understand that. So they'd have people, hey, I looked over, you had a 20-point horse and he finished 5th. I'm like, yeah, I bet on the one with 15 points. Well, but that one had 20. No, you don't understand the system. If you ask, I'll give you the winner next time of the horse I like the best anyway. But that's the same thing with any predictive tool in fantasy football. There comes a point where things are equal. Okay. And with opportunity, we now know that RJ Harvey is not equal to some of these other choices. And that's why I'm be kind of a little leery on him. But understanding how to use that number, obviously Giante is the rookie to running back that's going to have the most success, or at least set up to have the most success this year. And nobody is surprised by that. That's why he's going so dang early in drafts.
Right.
But, is he worth grabbing, with a first-round pick, late first-round pick? Boy, that's gutsy, for a rookie.
He is 13th.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's gutsy to me to grab him 13th.
On the turn, he might be worth just because you could grab, like a wide receiver. You could do Giante and Brown, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or you could do Neighbors and Giante.
Would love that. Love that
kind
move.
of thing. Or Lamb, he might fall. That kind of thing.
Yeah, or Giante and McBride, and you're
or
set
McBride,
up.
That's right.
You're
that
set up at 2 positions. Yeah. That's the kind of move that I'd be.
But I would have a hard
make.
time mid of the draft, 5th and 6th, to jump Giante over Gibbs, or if Saquon had dropped, or that kind of A-chain, and thinking, it just depends on where your draft slot is.
Yeah, and there's guys, my favorite 2 guys at that, favorite 3 guys, I guess you could say. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, Shane, and Brian Thomas are 3 guys that I really kind of like in that spot.
Brown is 15th.
Yeah. And
Shane is 10th.
But another guy that I like much later, but I can probably get at the end of the 2nd round or maybe early 3rd, is Josh Jacobs. So there's
he's end of 2nd, early 3rd. Yep.
And Chase Brown's another guy. Like, there's guys that pop up at different points.
Yep.
Yeah, there's these guys that pop up at different points in the draft that it's not so much that I like them better than anybody earlier in the draft, but right next to each other in the draft.
But you got
they
a choice,
become the best value.
Rashee Rice or Chase Brown. Dennis, why don't you just, since you're a KC fan, tell us about how you're viewing Rice now? Does he drop? He loses 2-3 games? What?
No, I haven't changed my mind on Rice at all.
Okay.
And here's the thing. Early, when I was drafting some best ball, early this year, he was coming in like 4th round.
This is 3rd round, Dennis.
And now you got to grab him
earlier,
much earlier. And he had come up all the way to the end of the 2nd round, which was
29th.
way too high. Yeah, it was way too high. He had been up as high as 25th on ADP on
He's
FPPC,
dropped since
and
then.
he's dropped because of that. Now, 29th, I still don't like him.
Yep.
You know, I've got him forecast as a 95 MVP guy for this year. That's pretty high, but it's not. I want in the
him
second
or Brees
round.
Hall. Who would you
Oh
have?
God, Brees Hall in a
Hall's
heartbeat.
at 33.
Yeah, I'll take him in a heartbeat because I've got Brees Hall forecast to be 110 on my MVP index versus 95 for Rice. My forecast for Rice hasn't changed at all. He's still going to be a valuable player,
right?
But end of second, middle of second, in my opinion, that was way too early for Rashee Rice. Not because of the suspension, but because of Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown and Kelsey. And the fact that maybe Kansas City's defense isn't as bad as I think it's, not going to fall off, and they don't have to score 35 points a game. Right. Those are the kinds of things that I'm looking at, and there's guys that I'd rather have. Right. Now, if he drops to 40th or 45th because people are all paranoid about the suspension, now all of a sudden he becomes a value again.
He becomes a value.
Which is where he was at the very beginning of best ball season. He was coming in about 45th. And I was like, man, at 45th, I'll take him as my third wide receiver or my second wide receiver, because I know at some point in the season he's going to have, and this is best ball too, where I'm more likely to have Kansas City receivers in best ball than redraft. It's always been that way. And, just like I'm probably going to grab Nakua and Adams in best ball if I can get them. In redraft, I might be out on both guys because there might be weeks that Adams has 10 targets and Nakua 5. It's going to be hard to predict with two guys that are that good. Versus I'd rather have a Malik Neighbors. He has less competition for targets, but enough competition that defenses aren't going to double him. Plus, they tried to double him last year and it didn't work. So those are the kinds of guys that I would rather have at different points in the draft. But Rice's suspension, I think it's going to be 2 or 3 games.
Right.
I'm not so sure his leg was ready to go week 1 at full blast anyway. So I'm looking at this, this was a Kansas City Chiefs move. This was, hey, look, you're going to be healthier on week 4 or 5 than you are week 1 anyway. Take the suspension. You have more weeks to get up to full speed. And we want you for the playoffs anyway. Like, they're not thinking, and this is where, like, team strength sometimes comes into play with my decisions early in the draft as well. Like, Minnesota's going to have to throw the ball some. And Jefferson's like their best target, their best guy. And I say best guy, I mean, he's better than any running back they've got on the roster. He's their number 1 feature in the offense. They will be throwing the ball a lot to Justin Jefferson versus a guy like A.J. Brown. He's got more competition because he's got his fellow wide receiver, Devonta Smith, and he's got Saquon. And then he's got Hurts, who sometimes prefers to run with the ball rather than throw it. So that's kind of the way I look early in a draft. I'm like, give me the guy who's the workhorse, who's going to Bijan Robinson. Atlanta's not going to be able to afford to rest him many games, right? They're going to need their best player to maybe make the playoffs this year. Right. So they're going to use him all season long versus a guy like Rice, where the Chiefs are like, man, we're going to be okay. Like, we got a tough schedule early anyway. We could drop 2 games in the first 5 anyway. And who cares? We're going to make the playoffs. And we know we can be strong in the playoffs from wherever we're seated. We still think we can win the division, but maybe they got to work a little harder to win the division this year, but that's kind of the thinking that goes into my draft pick selections early in a draft. First 3 rounds, I want a guy that, he's either the workhorse on the team or, he doesn't have competition for touches as much. Those are the kinds of ways that I like to look at players in the first 3 rounds.
Like it.
Well, Professor, we've got so many things that we could talk about, but we are going to have to call it a day for today. But hey, I'm going to have more of my player versus player articles coming
now the
this
editor's
week.
Back ready to chew on some of your article.
Yeah, the editor took advantage of your vacation to also go on vacation. So he was hanging out. I understand that the editor was hanging out at the casinos in Mississippi.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
He's kind of hanging out over there. We're not sure what he was doing. But while you were sipping
whiskey,
Scotch single malt whiskeys, he was drinking Ripple and
Thunderbird,
all that good stuff. So we're hoping he will be back by Monday to start posting some articles, but there'll be more player by player articles coming. I'll have an update on my MVP forecasts and
your opportunity
and my opportunity index. Those will all be coming soon. I know the professor's going to have a lot of data to share with you.
At some point, I got to get these posters done.
And then you come on back here, of course, next week for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks. Whew. Okay.
All right. That was
I don't think we have much time for after the show, so I'm going
to No, we're
good stuff.
We're in good shape, man. That was it's like
good.
we're back in
getting into
form,
the groove,
back into form. I am so excited about all of the studies this year. I'm telling you, I have never been so fired up for a season because, and again, knowing limitations, I know you were, I don't want to say.
I'm recording now, so don't give secret stuff.
No,
Should I turn it off?
No,
Secret talk.
No, you can keep it going. Okay. I know you were a little reluctant when you were showing me data before the show started.
Yeah.
Before we started recording. You were a little bit because you gave me some bad news or what appeared to be bad news.
Yeah. It's that door opened and it could be. We'll have to you never know what you don't know, but
But again, what it told me is that the way I'm treating my own data, is the right way. Because I am not. I've told everybody this, including you, and I've told all of our listeners, and I've told people on Fantasy Football Twitter and anybody else that wants to listen. You can't be a slave to one number. Even if you developed that number and you have faith in it. Like, I know how to use my MVP index. Okay? I know how to use it. I understand what it means. But I also understand its limitations. And knowing that is so valuable. But seeing it statistically today actually made me smile.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I know how reluctant you were to show that data.
Well,
it told me a couple of things. It told me, first of all, it told me what I already knew, and that I've already told you publicly that I think your Bush LR number is better than MVP. MVP is just simple to calculate. And MVP explains the data to me in a way that I can then apply it. But I always knew that it had quote unquote limitations. And now I know where the limitations are. And I'm cool with that. Like I hope it performs well, at other positions. I knew running back was going to be my weakest position. But I also know that the way I'm looking at the data, I understand how to handicap running back situations
Yep.
to win in fantasy football. So,
Right.
but it reinforced the whole concept that you can't trust one number.
Right.
That one number will lead you to a lot of pain in fantasy football.
Yeah.
But understanding the low and high forecast angle
Yeah.
is what makes MVP a valuable tool to me because I know how to use it. Now, I may not be able to teach other people how to use it, and I may not want to anyway, other
Yep.
than you, of course.
Yep.
But it's an interesting examination of data. And that's important whenever you're trying to get better in fantasy football or any forecasting. Forecasting, you're only as good as the tools you're using if you understand the limitations of those tools. In weather forecasting, there was an old model called LFM. There was limited fine mesh, is what it meant. It was a horrible model as far as being accurate, but it made consistent errors with winter storms. It missed the storm location by 50 to 75 miles and had it too far north 90% of the time. Now we've got better models, but their errors are plus or minus north, south, east, west. There's no consistency to the errors.
Right.
Which was the more valuable tool
Yeah.
to a
I see what you're
forecaster?
saying. Yeah.
If I knew where the mistakes were in the model, I could physically alter that forecast and be right. Versus now where it might miss north, it might miss south. I don't know. It's more accurate, but when it makes a mistake, the mistakes are less predictive.
Yeah.
That's hard for a forecaster. If I know where the mistakes are with a tool that I've developed, I can use that tool smarter. And that's the goal with anything in anything in forecasting. Like understanding the buyer number and its limitations
In horse racing.
in horse racing. That to me is more valuable than just follow the top number and you're going to lose. If you understand what that number means, you're more likely to pick the winner. So no, nothing that you showed me secretively today
Yeah.
surprised me.
Yeah.
And it actually made me very happy.
Well, we've got other positions to fish for, and
Yes.
I'm going to look
Yes.
at predictiveness, and I will say something positive. Imagine both say hi.
Yes.
How good are we
Yes.
there?
That's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key. Is
When both say
yes.
it's a go, is versus there's disagreement. What does that mean?
Yes.
We can
Yes.
catch that.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that the players that we are down on,
Yeah.
we're probably if we're avoiding them, we're probably saving ourselves money.
Versus draft capital again.
Versus
It's
draft capital.
yeah.
Always versus draft capital. And that's like, I've said I don't think that by the end of the season, or actually by week 8, I don't think Javonte Williams will be the starting running back getting the most touches for Dallas.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who is going to be, but I don't think it's going to be Javonte by week 9, let's say. That doesn't mean I'm not drafting Javonte Williams if he's available at the right
Well,
price.
he would flip to more of a handcuff if it's
Correct.
blue or whoever.
Correct. It's all in the way you execute a draft that is
But if you can
so
get
important.
of the 8, if you can get 4 weeks at nice levels, then hadn't he kind of paid as long as you've got the other one? And you
Correct.
could then, I mean, there. I tell you what, when I see this data, I will say I think the depth of trying to organize the multi layers of interactions is really, I need some heavier duty modeling, Dennis.
Yes,
It's probably
yes.
beyond me, you know, modeling what happens if player X goes down and what does that mean? It's tough.
But here's the joy of it. If you're getting them both at good value,
Mm-hmm.
I'm right. I have now, unless there's a third guy that comes in, and that's always possible. But if I grab two of the three, I got two chances of being right out of three.
Before I forget, what is the third guy index if you were to look at the stable of running backs?
Yeah,
Dennis,
so
is that a new, there's a new
yeah,
index. What is, the possibility, maybe don't name them, but just saying in Dallas, I got three guys. That may be a higher third guy possibility than, say, Denver or something with two
yeah.
guys.
What I think you can make an assumption on with
Yeah.
a split backfield situation,
Yeah.
the lower the value of the top dog,
Yeah.
the more valuable that third dog is to have on a
Could
team.
be that you could test that.
Yes. For instance, with Philadelphia this year, I'm probably not taking Shipley or AJ Dillon just because I have Saquon Barkley on my roster. Okay. Doesn't mean I'm not going to, but I'm not sure which one would take over if anything happened to Barkley.
But if you were to give a probability, is it 50-50, one or the other? Are you skewed a little bit? Like, I think Dillon has back class. I would
Yeah.
give him 60% to be the next guy up versus Shipley at 40. You see, if you could start putting that together, you
Yeah.
can start testing your forecasting.
Yeah. And I think with that particular group in mind,
Yeah.
my forecast would probably, between the two guys,
Yeah.
my forecast would probably be like 45 Shipley, 35 or 40 for AJ Dillon, and then the rest of the percent, the field.
The field.
Like somebody.
But when you put that down, Dennis, that allows us to have a point to measure.
Yes.
And you can find out, are you good at, say, the fourth wide receiver?
Yeah,
concept.
And I think I'm going to do that exercise for every roster. I love it. I love it because
I just wanted to, I don't know what we'll call it what you will, but that's just because that invites you to use your forecasting, which I think, I'm not sure there's an equation for Dennis's head, folks. Okay, it's like in the background of his picture. There's a lot of funny things happening
there's
back
a
there.
Lot of, there's a lot
of stuff going on in his head.
A lot of random thoughts, but what I will say is that a few years ago with Arizona, I had a lot of DeMarcado in Dynasty. Just sitting there waiting to come off the bench. And sure enough, he had 2 or 3 weeks his rookie year. When Connor went down, there was nobody else there. He wasn't the logical pick, but he was on my roster in deep dynasty because it's like,
I would be curious if you could put that together here. That
I
would love to see that.
Look at Carolina with our dynasty team.
Yeah.
We got Chuba Hubbard off of waivers.
Yes, we did. Good job.
For $1. I believe
dollar for
what we
That's
got.
Right. Nice.
We got him for next to nothing. Like $1 is you have to bid $1.
Yes, you do.
In FPPC. We grabbed him for $1 a year before he was worth anything. Like we got him because he was alive. Okay. That we needed running backs. I was grabbing anybody who had a pulse.
Yeah.
And we grabbed him
Yeah.
and we held him. And then he built into a valuable piece on that team last year.
Yes.
And he's probably going to be leading the way for us in the early part of this season as well.
Yep.
You know, that wasn't by chance. It was based on the fact that I look at the roster and I'm like, this guy's got a shot.
Yep.
I have some Rico Dowdle on my dynasty teams as the same way before he hit with Dallas last year.
Yep.
Doesn't mean I like him. Just means there was nothing in front of him that could prevent him. I got a lot of Brashard Smith with Kansas City this year. Same theory. I grabbed some. I mean, we grabbed him and we grabbed Elijah Mitchell for our dynasty team. One of them's got a shot if something happens to Pacheco. People think in the wrong way in fantasy football too often. You got to play the what if game.
Yep.
If this happens, what happens next? There isn't.
Maybe that's the name for the index.
Yeah.
The what if index.
The what if. Because, and again, I'll put percentages on it. And I'll be brave to do that. You know, just like the opportunity index, I'm willing to put the fake money on it of saying where my percentages are, because that lets me understand better how I feel about that player. For instance, San Francisco.
Yep.
It's possible. Again, we're recording this, so few people will see this and they'll get to chuckle. So I will phrase this as it's possible that Jacob Cowing could emerge as a wide receiver that's worth something at 3-4 game stretch of the season, maybe early, with all the injuries that they're having, the departures that they had at wide receiver. Doesn't mean you go out and draft him, but it does mean you keep an eye on him and see if he emerges. He's a guy that's that sleeper pick to emerge at wide receiver. And the rookie they drafted is another guy that's got a shot. I actually think Cowing's got a little better shot than him, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and put the percentages on.
There you go.
And
what if index?
What if index, and say here, these are the next guys up. This isn't the second wide receiver on the team. This is the third or fourth that could emerge if there's a disaster. Last year in Tampa would have been Jalen McMillan.
Yep.
And I liked him. This year it's a bouquet.
Yep.
And I'd put a bouquet at like 80% of the possibility. If Evans or Godwin goes down, he can play either of those positions. He can play slot or X.
Yep.
And all of a sudden he's a guy that you're looking at going, he could sub for either Godwin or Evans, or maybe they take Godwin out of the slot to keep him healthy.
Yep.
So there's multiple ways that a player can wiggle his way in to the lineup. And, you know, in deep dynasty, those guys I grab and I stash them on the taxi squad. And then I look brilliant if they hit. Yep. If they don't hit, you get rid of them and get somebody else. Like there's a strategy. A lot of what I learned in dynasty helps me in redraft, because you mold a team different. You have a lot of layers of waiting. Like an FPPC, we don't have a taxi squad. If we had a taxi squad on FPPC, we would really be kicking ass right now, because I wouldn't have had to release any running backs of the rookies last year. But it's, you know, every format is different, but I like that what if index. I think I like that.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right, Professor.
We got to go. I'm going to shut this down.